Well, this is about the third time I've tried to make this video, so hopefully this time, third time's the charm. Second time, I was trying to make it late at night, and I passed out before the end of the video. I literally fell asleep in the middle of making it, and that was the first time, rather. And the second time, I was getting along pretty good just now and forgot about the time. And I live on a military base. The tap started playing, and I had to stop for that. So let's see what we got here. As you can see, a number of changes have taken place, a lot of reversions back to some of the most powerful cards. What I've kind of done is a series of changes that involve trying to solve a particular problem. And that problem was that I was having a tough time with mulligans and some consistency issues early on. So the easiest way to fix that problem, and this is most likely a result of losing Ponder Preordain and Brainstorm. So the easiest way to kind of resolve that, well, I'll back up. I also do not currently have Scroll Rack in here. So there's a number of reasons why that could be occurring. But anyway, so the solution to this, as I saw it, was to add more land early on. I just didn't want a mulligan, but I didn't want to add lands like basic lands for land tax, or because I was actually hoping to take Scroll Rack out of the deck, as I've done. Instead, what I wanted to do is I wanted to add utility lands that could smooth out the early game, but also have some value mid to late. So I actually added, the land that I added was Cephalid Coliseum. So Cephalid Coliseum's been in here before. It's a very good mid-game card. And if I'm going to take Scroll Rack out of the deck, Coliseum gives me a way at a certain point in the game where I can convert land tax cards into real cards. Only once, but still, that's pretty nice. However, there is the potential for you can sack Coliseum to exchange land tax islands for real cards, and then start using Crucible to slowly retrieve all of the lands that you've discarded, as well as the Colosseum that you've played. So it's not too bad. But once I put Cephalid Colosseum in here, then I realized that at that point I've got so many different ways to put together the Dak Faden combo that I decided, which is to say that with Notion Thief, that I decided to put Notion Thief back into the deck. So I went ahead and did that. So Faden, Notion Thief's a combo, but Notion Thief Coliseum's a combo, and can actually be a soft lock if you are able to continuously use Coliseum during your opponent's draw step. With Crucible of Worlds recurring it, you can just keep them from ever getting anything that isn't an instant. And if it is an instant, they have to play it basically immediately. Or lose it. So it can be a very powerful effect. Of course, the real lock is just if you make your opponent discard 3 cards and you draw 3 cards for the low price of a single land, you should win that game 9 times out of 10, or even 99 times out of 100. It's just too powerful, even using it only once. So with that in mind, the other thing that was kind of driving me in this direction is that Cavern of Souls is extremely good against blue decks, and so good, in fact, that I wanted even another way to go get it. So I put Talaria West in the deck, as you can see way down here. No other changes have happened to the mana base. I will scroll down for those of you who haven't seen it yet. But so T West is in the deck, and the thing about T West is that it is generally going to go get Cavern of Souls against blue, but it has the ability to go get Mox Opal typically, or Ancestral Vision if you have As Foretold. So the As Foretold Ancestral Vision combo just gets a little bit better with Talaria West in the deck. Not only can you T-West into an Ancestral Vision, but you could even Expedition map into Talaria West into Ancestral Vision and draw 3 cards As Foretold if you needed to. So for example, you play As Foretold, and then the next turn you cast map for free, use it at the end of your opponent's turn for West, and then on the next turn you transmute and then draw 3 cards immediately off As Foretold, for example. So this all has like a kind of synergy. Talaria West allows you to put together the Coliseum combo better, the Coliseum combo with Notion Thief, who's now in the deck, of course, and so on and so forth. Now, Notion Thief is 1 toughness, and I wanted more ways to take advantage of it when I couldn't put the combo together, or my opponent didn't really have anything that Notion Thief was pinning down. And so I decided I'd put Skull Clamp back into the deck. Once I put Skull Clamp back into the deck, which also, of course, combos with Duretti and works very well with Vedalken Shackles quite often, I decided that with Skull Clamp back in the deck, I wanted another way to go get it. I initially thought Trinket Mage, but decided against because in the 3-drop there's a much more powerful effect, which is Toxic Deluge, so I snuck that back in. And then I went ahead and put Stoneforge Mystic in at 2 so that I could go get Skull Clamp a little bit more reliably. And of course, Jite and Sword of Feast and Famine. Stoneforge is not a human, so keep that in mind. But all the rest of the creatures are. However, at 2 mana, it's very easy to often resolve or sneak a Stoneforge underneath a counterspell, or just with use appropriate timing to take advantage of it. I think the fact that it's not a human is a bummer, but it's definitely not a showstopper. Now, I will say this: in the next set, there are many cards that look very good, and I'm very excited. They actually work extremely well with Breya, so hopefully Breya will not get banned, and we'll get to take advantage of some of those, and I'm looking forward to them. So do expect some changes coming up, but that's where I'm at for now with all the various changes to the deck. Now, as I said, I took out Scroll Rack, so I do not have Scroll Rack Land Tax combo in here at present. Partially because I just wanted one more counterspell, and Evasive Action is just such a good one in a 4-color deck. I wanted to put it back in the deck, so I did. Scroll Rack certainly could go back into the deck, or may make a return to the deck. We'll see. But with the next set coming out, I'm not sure about that. And with me only having 3 islands, I kind of want to be able to just play my lands and use land tax as just a very nice, like, mono island tithe, effectively, that I can occasionally reuse thanks to Jace, but in general, not a big deal. Probably one of the nice uses for islands mid-game, if you happen to get a tax off, is you can just tax into some islands and potentially Cephalid Colosseum them away, discarding a whole bunch of lands which have all got the potential to come back thanks to Crucible World. So that's an okay type of scenario there. Mainly just, look, 1 white to draw 2 to 3 lands is just really, really good and worth playing. Now, one of the other cards I took out, I do not like having out of the deck, but it is a temporary out. But we'll see. And that card is a Braid. I do think the card is super flexible and does exactly what you want. The problem is that I again found myself really wanting Disenchant all the time. It seems like there's always an enchantment that I need to target. And looking forward at the next set, I'm confident that Disenchant's ability to kill enchantments is actually going to become even more important. So for now, a Braid is Disenchant, but that slot could go either way. And it's also possible that I could run both Disenchant and a Braid, given that a Braid's super flexible. Time will tell on that one. I also took out Anguish Unmaking. Anguish Unmaking became Painful Truce. I think it's kind of an either or there. There's just too much. There's only so much damage you can do to yourself. And the thing is, Anguish Unmaking will save you in some bad spots. Usually not if the reason you're losing is like mana, or if it'll help you hold parity, basically. But Painful Truce will actually cause you to come from behind and start winning, or if you're ahead, you can bury your opponent in cards. It's a much more powerful, compact, excellent effect. And between Painful Truce, Whisper, Confidant, and so forth, we really got a strong ability to have some early game. Now, with all these changes, what was the result? I think that's just as important. So I haven't played much. As you can see, there's a 10-day gap here. I had some good games on 9.4, and I had some games on 9.2, and then there's another couple few games or whatever, but a lot of gap. And then there was also a big chunk of losing. So I had, a win, a loss, win, loss, and so forth. I think I ended up counting it up, and I was like, I don't know, 13-5 or something like that. I wasn't super pleased with my results. And after I made those changes, the ones that I just outlined for you, I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've won the last 9 games, including one with a huge break here where I'm completely rusty after 10 days. Just picked it up and played. And so I'm going to run through the games there where you can see the results of the changes, how that's affected things. So now I did pick up a 5-0, as the title will reflect. I'm going to find the spot where I did so that we can figure this one out. Now I'm 3-0 now, so these 3 games are in the next set. I haven't finished that set yet. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this was the last game, this Punchulano against with the previous version of the deck. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what I want to do is I'm going to run through the losing set. You can see Fluffy Pingo, Kick My Butt, and a few others. And then we'll run through the winning sets with the new build. So I'm not going to go over what the old build was, but you'll certainly notice some differences as we play through, and I'll try to point those out if I think about it. But to tell you the truth, it's been almost 2 weeks, so my memory might be a little bit rusty as well. All right, so let's take a look and see what we've got here. And I do apologize for the break, but unfortunately, work and family have to be the priority. So here I'm playing game 1 against Gonti. The family part's not unfortunate, but the work part, just how it has to go. So, all right, so I get to tithe on turn 2. Always a good thing. I love how tithe makes going second it makes going second okay. My opponent tries to addle me, is unable to do so, and then plays Knight's Whisper. At this time, I was running a Quiet Speculation package, so I do get to resolve a very, very nice Quiet Speculation, which puts Flash Deep, Think Twice into my graveyard. And man, when this package works correctly, it just seems, you seem so brilliant. But when you don't hit correctly with the Quiet Spec package, it is not too good. It really is a bummer to draw a card like Think Twice, a really bad slow card. It's so slow that even trying to play it from the graveyard is awful. So my opponent played my Enlightened Tutor because of Gonti, and fetched himself an Expedition map, if I remember correctly. Yeah, getting himself a Cabal Coffers. Oh no, he fetched Infernal. Well, you'll see. There it is, Infernal Darkness. So it is cumulative upkeep of a black and a life, and it makes it so that all lands only tap for black. So at this time, I can produce black mana and nothing else. I am putting some pressure on my opponent, but with Cabal Coffers and Urborg out, and Strand Dynamo, his ability to pay for that thing is almost indefinite. It's basically going to go on and on and on. So here my opponent tries to Deluge. I go ahead and hit him for some damage because I need to make it as painful as possible for him to continue to pay the upkeep on Infernal Tutor. And my opponent got 1 card with Gonti, exiled again from my deck. All right, so he's at 2 life and 2 mana now. The mana is pretty irrelevant for the most part. I can't play anything except for Deluge, but I don't want to Deluge his commander and just let him replay it. He plays a No Mercy, which is actually quite a bit merciful to me, given that I could not care less about the card. There's only one thing I'm concerned about, and that's him finding a win condition before I can actually play Magic. So he gets a Bauble that's going to allow him to continue to not just produce tons of mana, but also to pay for his costs. And of course, I continue on the path of not drawing any artifact mana here. All right, so he's holding the line with Infernal Darkness, but now he has to let it go or risk losing unless he has some kind of life gain. Oh, he's got a Crypt Gas, and he plays My Abyss. That was from my deck, which is a little bit strange here. I guess it's cool for him because he gets to replay his Gonti. But given that he has a Crypt Ghast out, and I'm quite worried that I don't know what that mana is going to do for him, I actually killed the Crypt Ghast only for 2 life instead of paying 3 life to kill both, since the Abyss is going to kill his commander. Alright, so he pays 5 life for his upkeep, and then replays his commander, taking another card from me, but he's now at 1. This is a little bit... I think he's held the line a little too long. He has pinned me down. I can't do much. But he's going to have to let it go, and he does. And we are going to now see the results of all of that stalling, which... So he's building up a lot of mana. Plays his Gonti, and in response, I'm going to Mystical Teachings, leaving a red in my mana pool, and attempt to Lightning Bolt my opponent. He has a response to that, though. He has Logic Knot. So in response to Logic Knot, I go ahead and Mystical Tutor, and I go get Kolaghan's Command, and with that, my opponent scoops. since I'm about to blast him for 2 points of damage, and he has had 1. So that was how that game played out right there. So like I said, that was that was with, this is the previous version. So this is against Carlos Z, and it started out okay, as you could see, even winning that kind of tricky game there, where I didn't get much, I couldn't play much. And here I have a game against Baral in round 2, and my start is phenomenal for a match against Baral. Like, and not only was my my start phenomenal, but I top deck in a way that makes my draw as close to unbeatable as it could ever possibly get against that deck. So right off the bat, I'm going to go ahead and search up a Cavern of Souls and then take out Baral. My opponent, of course, could not force a will there. He'd be walking to a daze and knows it. All right. Whether or not he has a force, I have no idea. And of course, if he goes for his commander here, then I can just daze. So instead he plays Proteus Staff, which allows me to fetch a second time. Weather Wayfarer, basically unbeatable for that deck if it hits on turn 1. Not totally unbeatable, but very close. All right, so I'm going to go for a Cavern of Souls with the daze backup, thinking that, if he plays his commander here, he won't have enough mana to actually activate Proteus Staff unless he has Commander, Mox, and an Ancient Tomb. It's kind of asking a lot, and even then I'd daze him. Okay, if he had Ancient Tomb, he would have played it pre-Frantic Search. So he pitches a Mental Misstep and an Essence Scatter, which isn't doing him any good, obviously. Mental Misstep must have drawn it too late after the Wayfarer can hit the board. So I swing in here. He's got a Factor Fiction. I split it up with a good counter spell, Logic Knot, and an island, and some counters that I can play around, like Force Smite in the other pile. He takes the other pile, which is very strange. So I'll go ahead and just kill his Proteus Staff. I know that he can counter a spell unless I pay 2, and I have Ancient Tomb up, so that's good times. All right, so I go ahead and just pitch a island here, smash in for some more damage. Pitch the island to Mox Diamond. I'm going to do the Windswept Heath trick here with Weathered Wayfarer. My opponent tries for a repeal on Breya, so I go ahead and just hardcast a Daze. It's one less card in his hand and a lot of tempo for me. Plays his Baral, so at the end of his turn, Heath Wayfarer gets to work, fetching me a Wasteland, just in case. And we'll go ahead and Windswept Heath a land into play. Kill his Baral, leaving 2 mana up in case he has some sort of fast effect. I draw Colligan's Command. I'm going to start swinging in for pressure now. I've got land drops for the next few turns, and I'm not super worried about drawing additional cards. I don't play Jace here because I'm kind of waiting for him to tap out. I try for an end of turn Colligan's Command. He does have an answer for it, so on my turn I play an Uncounterable Dark Confidant, a land, and smash in for 5 more. Unfortunately, I only have one set of artifacts to deal enough damage to my opponent to finish him off, but then he does me a favor and Pondrifies Breya, which means that when I recast it, he's toast. So he tries to Rise for the Tides and then says to me, if I remember correctly, something to the effect of, oh, I forgot they come into play tapped. However, if they had not, then this Uncounterable Breya here would have finished him off, which I demonstrate by defeating him without actually attacking. So he doesn't, and then I mentioned that to him, so he doesn't feel as bad. It was not actually a punt; it was an inevitability. I've even got Logic Knot to back it up. So that was very nice. So those are good early start to the games, and I thought I was on the right foot with this build, but then run into Fluffy Pingo, and I've had some good games against him where FP here is lost, and I've had some games where FP's beat me, and in this game, as you'll see, well, you already know the outcome. It's a Breya on Breya match, and I figured, oh, this is a pretty solid hand. It's not a great hand, but it's fast. Unfortunately, he's also got a fast hand, and now I'm kind of in some trouble here. All right, so I get Crucible Mox down, and all I have left is Deep Analysis, and my opponent plays Kaya and makes me discard a card, and Deep Analysis is looking pretty good right there. So I go ahead and play top deck City of Traders, which is insane. Play Breya and kill Kaya, which is a funny sentence to say. So at this point, I feel like I'm actually kind of doing pretty well. I go ahead and deep, and here's where I make my mistake. Okay, so at this point in the game, I could have won the game, But I make an assumption, a very bad assumption. And that assumption is that Crucible is going to live. So instead of playing my bounce land and picking up City of Traders, which was the correct answer, and would have allowed me to recast Breya and use it next turn, putting my opponent in a constant state of backpedaling, I play Wasteland thinking next turn what I'll do is I'll just waste him and I'll just keep on wastelanding until he gives up. Again, assuming Crucible lives. And that is the fatal flaw in my thought process. My opponent gets a Duretti down. I cannot stop Duretti. I can kill it with a bolt, but that's it. I lost Crucible. I never got to Crucible anything. I did top deck a Weathered Wayfarer so I can get some more cards, but my opponent has Tainted Pact. He's going to go fetch removal for Azorius Chancery, I believe. Yeah, if I remember correctly. Dak Faden. Yeah. Takes one of my mana sources. I even fail to tap it in response because I can't, because it doesn't. He takes my Mox Opal, it doesn't tap for mana, and then vindicates my other land. At this point, the game's over. Dak Faden is often game over in the Breya. Well, basically against almost any control deck. For Breya to deal with a Dak Faden is almost impossible. To deal with a Dak Faden in Karn, it's about as close to impossible as it gets. But look at this top deck. I get to Culligan's Command and take out his Karn and his creature in one shot. He uses Dak to steal one more artifact and then plays Phyrexian Arena. So even though I'm actually using Weathered Wayfarer to slowly start rebuilding my hand, my opponent T-Wests into a Wasteland, kills my duel there. And this was the game where I realized how good Talaria West really could be against other blue decks, and decided that I wanted to play it as well. So I do appreciate, even though, I'm giving it like my absolute all here, but even though I lost this game, I did learn something, and I think the deck's a lot better off in the current version than it was in the version that I actually played this game with. Although, again, I did make mistakes as well in this game and could have potentially done a little bit better if I had, at this point, when I Mystical Tutor, there is nothing in the deck that gets me out of this, so I just concede. So this was the version I was running with a lot of strangeness. Just didn't make a lot of sense the way that it was built, quite frankly. All right, so that was the game against Fluffy Pingo. And then I'm going to play Karigo here, who also beat me, and that was the double whammy that really drove it home. I needed to make some changes. So we'll run through this. Got a Culligan's Command. Thought seized right out of my hand. My opponent's playing just your classic, abusing the partner mechanic team. This is the best team for abusing the partner mechanic, although the green-blue and the green-blue black-white combo is also quite solid as well. Green-blue, blue-red is okay too. Pretty much anything with blue, anything that lets you play blue and draws cards in partners is fairly gross. I have a reasonable start here. Unfortunately, my opponent's start is just a little bit better because he dazes my removal on Timna. Now he gets to start drawing cards, and he could have even equipped Jitte there, and when he doesn't, I realize I'm definitely sunk. So I'm not going to play into the counterspell that I know he's holding. As it turns out, it's not a counterspell, it's a click, but I'm still going to counter that and get rid of Timna. So I have a chance here, but it's a very weak chance. Mana Leak makes it a little better, so I go ahead and throw the leak down. The Jitte down because I want to actually sit on the leak. Opponent evasive actions it, which I let go, and perhaps I should have fought over, simply because Jitte gives me such a tremendous board presence. But I was thinking I needed to save the leak for other plays. If I had fought over it, though, as it turns out, I would have won the fight and lost the war because, as you can see, he would have Culligan's commanded. So I guess my play, was technically correct. He's not slamming his commander here, so that's very telling as to what my opponent is most likely holding. So he vamps end of turn. I'm hoping he doesn't go get Wasteland, actually. He gets Liliana the Veil. I certainly don't want that, so I counterspell. And luckily it resolves, which means it's probably time to cast Breya here. And I think that not playing it there with a Daze in hand was a huge error. All right, so I see the problem though. I was missing I had plateau, but I didn't have a second white source or a red source, depending on how you look at it. So drawing that tithe was actually what I needed to allow me to cast Breya. I think that was the problem for most of this game. Lucky for me, my opponent walks into a daze on a flashback Culligan's command, which was very, very nice. Unfortunately, what's going to happen is even though I've killed Tymna once and he's played it a second time, he has an entirely different commander that he's also going to get to play multiple times, and that's way too ridiculous to really find a solution for, as you'll see. So I go for Breya. He's got a counter. So I'm losing to Tymna right now, and that's without him even playing his second commander. Why does he get a second commander? Who knows? Because I guess some people just get multiple resources and some don't. All right, well, whatever. That is, by the way, the color combination I will switch to if Breya is banned, because it's completely and totally absurd. It's just that I really don't enjoy abusing stupid mechanics. I like abusing powerful cards, but not taking advantage of broken rules, if I can help it. Which I don't know. I mean, I'm also not convinced that it's better than Breya. It's certainly comparable though, and in this game it's proving quite a bit better. As you can see, I'm trying to pin his board down, and now his Jitte's got a lot of potential to just take over this game. But I'm figuring I can recast my commander and then play a Duretti. Unfortunately, yet again, my opponent gets to play, what is that, his fourth or fifth commander for the game because of the unfair mechanic. So having already made a huge mistake with my pickup lands last game, I wasn't going to make them again this turn, but we're going to bug out. At any rate, I don't beat Tymna, Jitte, and the other commander that's about to come down, pounding my face over and over, and so we have to throw that one away. So finally, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so that was not the last game of that set. The last game of that set was here against Puncholino, I guess. I'm going to go with that. And Puncholino is playing Baral, and I, yet again, have Weathered Wayfarer, the Baral killer. So mental misstep, force of will, or lose is pretty much how this generally plays out. Opponent floats an Ancestral Recall, or Ancestral Vision, rather. I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to just sit on an uncasted Weathered Wayfarer here. I'm going to go ahead and just spin some cards and mana out. Right now, while he's tapped out, I figure he's going to go for Brawl, and he does, which is totally fine by me. Because I have Forbid, I've got Mystical Teachings with Vampiric Tutor in hand and Toxic Deluge. I'm looking real good here. Alright, so let's see what his play is. He imprints a Deep Analysis on a Chrome Mox, so 4 cards under that Chrome Mox, just so he can get a Proteus Staff into play. Of course, that allows me to, wait, why would I have Vampiric Tutor here? This is going to bug out. Why would I have not fetched a land? Oh, because he didn't play a land. Okay. Okay, so I have Vampiric for Palace Jailer there. He's playing around Weathered Wayfarer is what he's doing, so fair enough. I'm just going to have to start drawing 2 cards per turn. Alright, so he's on his last turn for the Ancestral Vision. He finally plays a land, allowing me to start Weathered Wayfaring. Bleh, that's quite a mouthful. Again. And I top deck a Badlands, which was great timing. So I get Mystical Teachings here and just take his Baral right off the board. And I do. I choose to do it with Swords of Plowshares because it's only 1 life. And generally there's no other target. And I might actually want to Lightning Bolt him. Here I'm drawing these bad cards in my deck, the Deep Analysis and so forth. Opponent gets to Ancestral, yes, but I've got a... I'm drawing like comparable cards thanks to Palace Jailer, and I'm about to draw even more with Weathered Wayfarer kicking in. So we'll get started on that. I go and Wasteland his Tech Edge, and there's no time. He tries to respond to it, but when I play Tech Edge, I have 4 lands. When I sack it, I have 3, so there's no opportunity for him to actually activate in response because the sack is the cost, not the effect. Opponent goes for a Bribery here, and I think I just Factor Fiction in response, hoping to hit some of my other creatures. He dazes it and then gets the bribe off, which allows him to get Stoneforge, strangely enough. I figured he'd get Dark Confidant into his own sort of Feast or Famine. So it's kind of interesting to see some of my tech. I don't know if it's my tech, but tech I've been using for a long time kind of coming into play here. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and ready his Stoneforge right off the board there. The reason is his Proteus Staff and Connect, and also because I don't want to even have a slight chance of him taking the Monarch back. So he plays Sword of Feast and Famine. Doesn't play his Commander because I would just ready it away. I get to continue to Wayfarer thanks to the Azorius Chancery I fetched last turn, and that allows me to make an uncounterable Breya, who would have been producing cards to kill his commander. Instead, I'm just going to kill his Proteus Staff since that's the only threat he has left on the board. I would like to actually take out his, I throw away Deep Analysis Ancient Tomb because I'm only at 11. So I would like to take out his Sapphire Medallion, and we'll try to get there, but for now I'm just going to pressure, and I managed to cast As Foretold and it resolves, so even better. I've got a Forbid going, just all kinds of this is all kinds of my opponent not finding a way to win this game. If he were to figure out a way to get his Emrakul into play, like with some sort of Manland, activate it, polymorph it, I forbid with buyback. He counters with the last of his mana and gets Emrakul in play. After all that work, I just ready it off the board anyway. So there's pretty much nothing he can do in that state. So as you saw, Deep Analysis was kind of okay in those games, but in general, pretty dead. So I switch out from that to the current build, and as you'll see, it goes real nice. So Chabanya, I believe we should be in the current build with these 5 games, but if we're not, I was in the midst of making the adjustments. So I will look, it looks like we are though, so I will look for evidence that that's not the case, but I don't expect to find any. So playing against Teza here, and my opponent gets an early Wasteland plus a Steel Shaper's Gift off with a Weathered Wayfarer out, and he goes and gets Skull Clamp. So this is significantly slowing me down and about to allow him to draw additional cards. He gets a Viscera Seer, which is really unfortunate. I actually, instead of playing Stoneforge, I play a Felwar because I'm concerned about I need to surpass him on mana, since I'm clearly not going to surpass him on cards, or at least it doesn't look like it. He gets to gather the Townsfolk out. This is so bad for me, but by playing my Felwar last turn, I'm able to play Dak Faden this turn and steal his Skull Clamp, and then play a pickup land. And while Dak Faden's going to die, he now has no access to Skull Clamp, and I'm a Breya deck with a Skull Clamp out. So on this turn, I go ahead and fetch and clear his board, I believe. Or maybe I don't. I decide to sit on Forbid. Interesting enough. Okay. Opponent goes for Mesmeric Fiend, which is awesome because, well, it's useless since I have swords and board clear. Swings in for some damage. No big deal to me. And I clear the Fiend so I can get my Deluge back. Now do I clear it? So this version still had By Force in it. So there are some subtle differences here. By Force would not be... it would be Notion Thief or one of the other cards that I'm currently using. So we'll see. Anyway, opponent plays some sort of 1/1 with some sort of useless ability and a Shriekmaw and passes for the turn. I go ahead and play Breya, start clamping, drawing many cards, overdrawing as a matter of fact, throwing away By Force. Opponent screeches out some cards. So clearly, Skull Clamp is the best card in his whole deck. So having stolen it was pretty much the death knell for him. And at this point, my opponent duresses me, and I have 5 counter spells in hand, so I don't even counter it. I just let him have it and sit on the other 4. Well, Merchant Scroll isn't a counter spell technically, but it can be. He tries for a Raise the Alarm. I'm going to mana leak it here just for tempo. My opponent being at 2 cards, and I have 3 cards in hand plus Sword of Feast and Famine about to get going. So I play Shackles, steal his only blocker, equip Sword, smack him, draw some cards, and then clamp the 1/1 that I stole and draw even more cards. Alright, so sitting on multiple counters, we'll just take some damage and end a turn Factor Fiction if he doesn't do anything. And he does not. And with a Factor Fiction displaying 5 very powerful cards, my opponent finally gives up. EOT FOF YL. Sounds good to me. And we move on to game 2. So this is F2PBTW, free to play, but buy to win. I don't know what that stands for. Anyway, and he's playing Nissa. And I've got a great start. Force of Will is always nice to see in the opening hand. Not always great if you don't actually have a way to recover the card advantage early on. But I do have the potential for that just because of the Enlightened Tutors. So I get a first turn Jeweled Amulet charge, second turn pass. Opponent goes for an Explorer, that's fine. I'm not going to muddle that. I want to save muddle for Force and use Whir. For Orb is the game plan. So I'm going to Enlighten Tutor at the end of his turn. But because he tapped 2 mana main phase, I decide I'm going to Orb now. So I Orb now and decide instead that the game plan will be Whir tapping the Orb. My opponent has a Rec Sage who gets forced and totally taps him out. I draw a Tithe, which I can play under the Orb to make my land drop and not lose anything, really. All right, so I'm going to be patient. I'm not going to Whir just yet, but the game plan is definitely to Whir and free my land. So first I'm going to go ahead and just get Breya down. I'm going to leave Jeweled Amulet there. Not sure that was correct. I should have taken the charge off for Breya here. I had one more land untapped, but I guess I was holding it for Whir, which I can now do on this turn. So opponent replays Nissa. I smash in with Breya only, not the Thopters, because I need those for Whir. The intent here is to massively cheat the Orb in two ways. First, by using Whir to tap Winter Orb. Secondly, by using the target I'm fetching, which costs exactly 3 mana and is pretty good against green, or so I hear. Sword of Feast and Famine. I can now equip Sword, thinking about how I want to do this exactly. Smash in and take out Nissa and hit my opponent for 6. Untap all of my lands. Charge Jeweled Amulet in response, of course. Float some mana in response as well. Untap all my lands and then sack to kill his 4/4. I get a Winter's Grasp out of his hand. That's definitely not a good card to be playing under a Winter Orb. And at this point, my opponent gives up. And I can't remember. I think he complains or something, but fair enough. What is it? Oh, no, it actually gives me props, which was super cool. Okay, there was a guy that over the day that was like, you know, blah, 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 something, 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 Winter Orb. Fortunately, it was not that person, and if you are watching this video, thank you very much for the compliment. I appreciate it. All right, so next game was against Used Car Salesman, or at least for the props on the videos. And he's playing Rexiel. And one of us is going to get Rex sealed, but it's probably not going to be this deck. So I could have wasted in there, and I was very tempted to do so because he looks like he's got a tremendously slow start. But I decide to hold out so I could have 3 mana for As Foretold and then Wasteland. But because I drew Crucible, we're just gonna start rocking Crucible Wasteland immediately. So my opponent actually uses mana in response, which means I play As Foretold rather than wasting a second time and putting the Wasteland at risk to a Bojuka Bog. But also because now I can use my land drops to destroy lands without actually being and still be able to make plays. So like here's my upkeep. I'm going to vamp using As Foretold. And at this point my opponent just realizes it's pretty much hopeless. So like what I'm going to do, I'm going to go get a counterspell, and then it's just going to be as simple as that. Continue to Wasteland the heck out of my opponent over and over while As Foretold ticks up, and I just keep casting spells on the cheap. And of course, as you can see from my hand, next turn I get to draw 2 cards off Nice Whisper, and then pretty soon we're going to be casting Tezzeret and throwing an Orb down if my opponent finds enough basics to get out of this mess, which he doesn't stick around for. The Used Car Salesman has been defeated. And we move on to Chirigo, or Chirigo, I believe would be the pronunciation, one of those two. And it's your classic cheat on partner kind of setup. And I've got a pretty solid start. It was really questionable as to whether or not I go City, Talisman, throw down an Opal, and then, you know, I would lose a land, but then I can set up for Tithe right off the bat, or whether or not I do this. And I decided to go this route, and I kind of pay for it here. with a spell snare. Because if you notice, I have no white mana. I also have no blue mana for Force. This is actually, I have no black mana for Yawgmoth's Will. So like, and I draw another black card that I can't cast. So this is super, super bad. Opponent plays Thalia, which just makes things that much worse. I go ahead and play a 1-mana Mox, since there's a Thalia out and I can. And I did have I did finally draw a blue source, Muddle the Mixture, so that I'm able to Force the Will one of his commanders. Still don't find white. Like, so my choice here, my line was totally, totally wrong. Look at, I'm just getting punished left and right by my deck over and over. Opponent wastes a lightning bolt on me, which is a little strange. Really kind of glad to see that, given that I'm holding Weathered Wayfarer. I don't like the fact that my life is low, but it's actually just suddenly just gotten a lot better. I find a command tower which solves all my color problems, and now I just need to use the cards in my hand to solve the rest of my issues. My opponent finally finds his 4th land. He's been missing land drops as well, which means I get to actually tithe in, and Weathered Wayfarer does not get punished by Thalia, so I play that. It gets Fatal pushed, so maybe that's why he tossed the Bolt earlier. Don't know. So I go ahead and for an end of turn Vampiric. My opponent's missed another land drop, so I actually want to get Wasteland. So my opponent countering Vamp there was correct, I think. But it does free me up to play Breya. My opponent can't cast a 1-mana counter spell here. In response, my Mox Opal is now turned on, and I like Thalia pinning my opponent's mana down, so I am actually not going to try to. If my opponent were attacking, I would probably let it through. He's being very careful not to swing. Fatal pushes a bird, so I go ahead and sack and kill Snapcaster just to keep. I want to keep Thalia in play, and I want it to continue to put a really tough pinch on my opponent's mana. I was hoping he'd actually send in with Creeping Tar Pit, and then I would either Breya it off or Swords it. But he doesn't, so he goes for Spell Queller. Fine by me, because I'm going to play a Mox Diamond and Swords that Spell Queller with exactly 1 mana floating, thanks to City of Traders, which allows me to go get Snapcaster Mage. So I swing in with Breya. My opponent finally blocks killing Thalia because he obviously is hurting him. I try an end of turn Mystical flashed back, and my opponent remands it. So on my turn, I try for a Snapcaster during my upkeep. Snapcaster happens, so I go for Vamp. My opponent memory lapse it. Holy smokes, he's had an answer for both of my flashback cards. Fortunately, I have drawn a Dimer, so I Dimer into picking up City of Traders. I do have board pressure going, and then my opponent thought seizes the Yawgwill out of my hand. So pretty much Kolaghan's commands my board, and everything I wanted to do has been shut down. However, my opponent's still choking on mana. And under the assumption that I'd rather hold Shackles and Bluff, I decide not to play it, especially if he's got some sort of mass artifact removal, which I feared. He does not, but he does have a Supreme Verdict. I decide the thing to do about that is to deal 3 damage and not kill my Moxes, because I really want to be able to continue to cast Breya. And then I top deck a Demonic Tutor, which is huge. So I go for Breya first to see what happens. And with 2 mana up, I go ahead and cast Demonic Tutor, and you probably guessed what I'm going to get. And if you guess Winter Orb, you're almost right. I decided to go get Tezzeret, only because if my opponent has a board clear, I can still win this game easily enough with the Tezzeret. He actually has a pseudo board clear with Arc Trail. Taking him down to 8, though, not quite good enough, but the True Name Nemesis he found will allow him to kill the Tezzeret if he wishes, at the cost of 4 life to himself. And now we're going to orb him. He does not kill Tezzeret. Very interesting. So I draw a Stoneforge, which is huge, because of course it's going to allow me to go get Umezawa's Jitte this time, which I can immediately cast thanks to Tezzeret untapping Moxes. And while Jitte will not do anything if I can't connect with my opponent, what it does is it assures that he can't start some sort of race where he's hitting me with True Name and I'm hitting him back with Breya, and somehow he manages to get ahead. Let's say, for example, he killed Breya and starts hitting me with True Name and I'm trying to swing back with Stoneforge. He would win that race. But add an Umezawa's Jitte to the mix, and that's suddenly no longer the case. So that was why I fetched it, just to ensure that I couldn't get raced. And At this point, my opponent really can't play any other creatures because of shackles. He can't really afford to attack because of Tezzeret. And if he doesn't attack, Tezzeret's going to win the game in a couple of turns, which means he has to attack, which means he can't win, which is why he scooped, I think. So we move on to the next game, and it's kicks. And funny enough, I end up playing, this was from my 5-0. End up playing kicks immediately afterward to start the next set. And I've got a pretty nice hand, and my opponent is playing the same two broken partner mechanic. Those cards are fine if the mechanic wasn't so broken. In fact, the funny thing is, even the card that they banned, the partner that they banned, would have been fine if it weren't for the partner mechanic being broken itself. Anyway, but alas, we have to deal with this absurdity. So my opponent's got a strong start on mana, at least. I've got a very nice early start, and I don't really have a lot going on. But I do have Expedition Map, so I'm going to go get Cavern of Souls. Now, if I had played this differently, I could have potentially slammed a Narset here, but I decided instead to play an Uncounterable Breya, investing a Mystical Tutor into a Mox. Because Mystical Tutor, I have such a good hand that I don't really need a Mystical Tutor. I don't anticipate needing to do that. And there's no need to go down a card for that when I have everything I need in my hand. My opponent tries to make a play at the end of my turn, and with that, I'm able to instantly orb him out of the game. And I still have enough mana to kill a Thopter if he tries to fly over with it, although I'd probably just kill Tymna. And that, it quite simply ends the game in a very short order, and we take a 5-0. And I'll go ahead and spin through the other three probably in the next round, but you know what? Well, I don't know if I should do these now or not. These are 100% with the current version. I suppose that I shall go ahead and spin through these. And if I do end up going 5-0, we'll kind of make it a continuation video, and then do like another set. We'll do maybe 7 games or something like that. If I can pull a 5-0 off twice, or however this will end up working. But since I've got this game video running, we'll go ahead and play these 3. And this is 100% with the current version, of course. It's the same opponent, same busted commanders. All right. I've got another really solid start, and of course with Painful Truce in the deck now, which it wasn't before in the last game that I played against this opponent, you can see how like amazing it is right here. My opponent gets an uncounterable Thalia, however, which is going to screw things up because I can't mana leak into Painful Truce here. It's quite painful. So I Mystical Tutor instead in response with 1 blue mana floating so that my opponent cannot do anything that involves some sort of force spike, although of course he would have been unable to do so anyway given they didn't have an island for days, but it's just better safe than sorry. Go ahead and kill Thalia at the end of his turn, go for an As Foretold, hoping he's going to tap out, and he does for a Logic Knot, which allows me to daze and push it through, which is fan-frickin-tastic. And then he Inquisitions away 3 cards out of my hands. Very bad. Gets to play as Tymna. And my very strong start looks a bit weaker because he's kind of had exactly what he needed on each turn to make my start so much worse than it could have been. He had Thalia, Cavern of Souls, Thalia combo, and then of course he had the Inquisition right when he needed it as well. So this game's actually just gotten a lot harder. I can't counter his Meddling Mage, and he gets to Meddling Mage Breya, and it's even harder. What am I going to do? I can't. So he's used his Jitte counters to kill Breya once, but I can't. He's now got a Luterial Core that I can't counter, and he's going to be able to put Jitte on it. And so what do I actually do here? I can't cast my commander. I can't control the board. I can't really do much of anything. This is really bad. My opponent's situation is just getting better and better. But what I can do is top deck the Talaria West Tech that I added to the deck and Ancestral myself into Swords to Plowshares. It's so phenomenal. All right, so on my opponent's turn, he's swinging in. I'm going to go ahead and I consider chomping, but decides I'm just going to sword. Opponent tries to memory lapse that. I let that happen because I really want Swords to Plowshares. I don't mind drawing it a second time. He goes for Tymna, and I mana leak it, thankfully. Find that sword, get the Meddling Mage off the table, pick up my City of Traders and cast my Breya. Now, unfortunately, I don't get to orb him here because I wanted to draw the swords to plowshares. I needed to draw that. But my opponent tries to Umezawa's Jitte away a creature. I kill his creature, and I'm in fairly decent shape. Not great. As you can see, he can clear out a Thopter, and then I won't be able to sack with Breya, but he opts not to, and he pressures my mana instead, which isn't really good considering that I've got As Foretold in play. So I actually kill Breya. Um, in response to him killing a Thopter, I actually sack Breya, and then tutor at the end of his turn. Hard cast a Winter Orb and free cast a Breya, paying only the tax. And we're going to bug out right now, but my opponent did not untap any of his mana there, was not able to do anything for the rest of the game, and unfortunately, the game is ruined by Magic the Gathering replay bugs. I apologize, but as you can imagine, when you have Breya in play with As Foretold that will cast anything in your deck, and a Winter Orb running against a mostly tapped out opponent, it's not that hard to figure out how to win that game. So we move on to game 2, and I was playing against PHT even. It was just so nice to have that tech come into play that game. And I've got a stellar start. Like, this makes his green deck look slow, even though he got a Gemstone Caverns. He gets a Dryad Arbor, which does actually slow him down a little bit. I go ahead and Tezzeret into a Mox Opal right away. He plays Selvala, and I finally draw a land here. And now I'm able to fetch, and the land was like perfect timing because of course it allows me to cast Breya, draw a card off of Selvala, then draw nothing off the Thopters, but then Tezzeret into 4 mana exactly, kill Selvala, and cast an Umezawa's Jitte and pass for the turn. And my opponent's staring at a 5 casting cost Selvala, an insane board that he's going to have a tremendous amount of difficulty dealing with. And of course, as you know, I'm going to get to Gulligan's Command him, killing his Dryad Arbor, making him discard a card. It's just going to get so much worse from here. And then I can Tezzeret for 1 and go get Expedition Map and take out his Gemstone Caverns, or find other ways to disrupt. It is a no-win game from there. My opponent realized it and scoops, which was awesome. And then 10 days pass. I sit down to make this video, decide to play one game, and this is the game that I end up playing against Cap Chaos 1, playing one of my also most hated commanders, Tasigur, because it completely and utterly it's totally degenerate and totally breaks the commander mechanic in half, just snaps it all in half. Alright, so early game, I go ahead, because of what I'm holding, I Mystical Tutor for Force of Will, going first, and go get a turn 2 Dark Confidant. My opponent tries to hymn me. Given that Mana Leak will protect Dark Confidant, I want to protect that, so I go ahead and Force of Will it rather than taking the random discard and hoping to keep Force. And my opponent has a Hero's Downfall, which I get to Mana Leak. Fortunately, I drew that map, so I'm going to hit consistent land drops. I also drew a Demonic Tutor this turn. I would have loved to have seen something a little bit different than what I got, but I decided I'm going to continue to attempt to protect Dark Confidant. Unfortunately, my opponent has Thoughtseize into Sword of Feast and Famine and has a Wasteland plus a Demonic Tutor. I go ahead and daze the DT because by doing so, my opponent has to have gone and got a Force of Will here. So I'm going to try to make him have the Force of Will, which he does. But I get a Force and a Remand, and it makes up for some of the card advantage that the cards that I've lost. And at this point, we're actually even on cards, except for I'm up a Dark Confidant, and then he has Painful Truce. Ouch. Alright, so now he gets to play 1 casting cost Tasigur, and I rip Skull Clamp. Skull Clamp Breya. So if he doesn't get into my hand here, we're in really good shape. He finds a Dust Bowl. I think long and hard about how to block and finally decide I'm going to double block and see if he's got removal, because if he does, it's okay. Instead, he just has Activate Tasigur, so he got to draw a card off his 1 mana commander, kill 2 of my guys, but it's not enough right now. I send in Dark Confidant, trading with the Deathrite Shaman, which is fantastic for me because I don't want my opponent having access to that kind of mana. And I Vampiric Tutor and use Skull Clamp to put together a Winter Orb package that locks him down pretty good. Now I do know that he can cast his commander soon, but I've got a ton of mana in my hand, and I dump it all on the next turn, setting myself up to have defense. And he plays Liliana and pluses it up. This is great. He loses his Serum Visions for nothing. I top deck Stoneforge and get the third piece of equipment in my deck. I've actually lost a sword early, top decked a Skull Clamp early, and go get a Umezawa's Jitte. I then equip Skull Clamp on Stoneforge and pass. My opponent does what I expect. He stops hitting himself with his own Disrupting Scepter. Instead, he hits me with a Brain Geyser, a mini Brain Geyser for 2. And I do have 1 blue up and a Spell Pierce, so I'm feeling pretty good. I can't, of course, stop his 1 mana Tasigur, so my opponent's generated 10 extra mana. 10 mana this game with his commander. Seems a little bit unfair to me, but well, I thought I was going to Spell Pierce here, but instead I just pay 1 for Breya and pass. Now I'm figuring he's just going to plus up Liliana, and I'm going to throw away a card, and then that'll be that. But he sends in. I can't double block. That was a little tricky. I'm going to pause it right there, because when he swings in here, I thought about... pause, please. I thought about single blocking, because he had 2 counters on Liliana. So if I double block and kill Tasigur, if he had some removal and killed my flyer and then Breya, he could have minused and killed Thopter, and then I have no board presence at all, and I probably lose a game. So it was too risky, even at 8 life, to do that. So then another option was I can chump block with a Thopter. But my problem is, if I do and kill a Thopter that way, again, if he has removal, he kills a Thopter, then he minuses, kills Breya. I have no board presence, and I lose. The only way I can win this... now, on the other hand, if he had like Berserk or something totally outlandish, by not blocking I lose, but I figured that was the least likely scenario, removal being far more likely. So I let it all through. I take 4, I drop to 4. He doesn't have the removal, he just uses Liliana to edict away 1 creature, and that allows me to use Umezawa's Jitte here and get out of killing range. Now I could have attempted to just finish him off with Breya immediately this turn, but I decide, since he can't win the game unless I tap out and he has some kind of special trick that I'm not prepared for, I'm not going to tap out. I'm just going to play it safe, gain some life, take my hit, end of turn, uncork my mana, leaving enough mana up for a counter spell. I will not, at this point, sacrifice another thing because I have 2 mana up. I don't want to get stifled and then have him kill Breya in some fashion. So I sack Winter Orb here, taking him to 3. I don't need to sack anything else. All I do is attack with Breya. And so if he has a play as an instant, I'll sack 2 more artifacts and finish him off. And if he has no play, then I'll just untap, smash him for 4. And anything he tries to do at that point will be far too late because I have double counterspell to protect it. So managed to pull a win out despite my opponent producing the equivalent of 5 Soul Rings over the course of that game. But the only reason I really did was because of some very timely top decks, and mostly which involved actually the Skull Clamp. The Skull Clamp was huge. So I thought that was kind of neat that Skull Clamp actually did what Clamp is very, I was able to take advantage of its full capabilities that game, as well as in one of the early games that you saw where I actually stole a creature and then clamped it away. And so that's all I've got for now, but the deck's running very smoothly, as you can see. I do feel like a Braid probably does need to be in the deck somewhere, but like I said, there's the new set's coming, and there are a couple of cards that I have an eye on. Brian and I have both discussed them. We're both interested in these cards. I will name them for you. You can look them up if you're interested. Spell Swindle is an interesting card. Another card that's really interesting is Search for Azkaban, I believe, Azcanta. Another card is a card called Dowsing Dagger. Legion's Landing is weaker than the others I just mentioned, but has some potential and maybe a card worth playing. On the other hand, our Jules Blood Pact is totally crazy and definitely is a card that can easily win a game. If I were to play green for some reason, Like if I were to go back to Edric or whatever, Growing Rights of Illimak is crazy and good. There's also a very weak version of these flip cards called Treasure Map that may be strong enough to play, but may not be. It's something I'm looking at, but I find that one to be the least likely out of the bunch that I mentioned. The white flip into a land card, and the treasure map card that I just mentioned, the last one I mentioned, are the weakest. The other ones range from insane to extremely good, and I'm pretty excited because there's definitely going to be some changes in here. And what's cool about a lot of those cards is that because they function as spells that turn into lands or super lands, they're going to be very interesting for allowing, for example, you to have something to do early and then convert into additional lands for your commander late. Now, it would be better, admittedly, if they started as lands and then you could transform them into spells later, so that you could have mana drops early and then have plays later. But because the lands that they transform into in some cases are very much like spells, draw cards, produce tons of mana, or have other strong abilities. And because they also act like a kind of rampant growth. I'm just real excited to play them. The white one, as weak as it is, has some extremely good synergy with Skull Clamp, and it is still a very cheap and early ramp. And all the cards I mentioned, or the majority of them, have some really good synergy with Breya in particular. So it's going to be very nice. So I look forward to the next set. I look forward to your thoughts, and thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next time.